Hello, thank you so much for joining us. This video, recording this interview that we're doing right now is being broadcast across several different platforms on Facebook, YouTube, and other places as well. We'll also be putting this on our website along with links and references that are discussed here. I'd like to go ahead and start with thanking both Dr. Melinda Connor and also Betsy Lehrfeld for joining me today. I'm going to go ahead and start with reading their bios, and then we'll go ahead and jump into the questions that we have and the things that we're wanting to discuss. My name is Tammy Anderson Ward, and I am the conference producer for the Energy Healing Conferences. And so that's what this channel is all about. This is why you're here. I'm very pleased to have both of you ladies on. Thank you so much for joining me.
Our pleasure.
You're so sweet. Okay, let's go ahead and start with Betsy. Betsy Lehrfeld is attorney at Swankin and Turner Law Firm in Washington, D.C. Betsy E. Lehrfeld, a principal in the firm, focuses on insurance, investment, and regulatory issues, healthcare, health specialty certification, and commercial, contract, corporate, and tax matters for businesses and nonprofit organizations. She has appeared before the Food and Drug Administration and has served as general counsel to Consumers United Insurance Company, the National Certification Commission for Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine, and the Consumer Health Foundation, formerly Group Health Association, Inc. A graduate of the University at Berkeley School of Law, Boalt Hall, she currently serves as an executive director of the National Institute for Science, Law, and Public Policy. So thank you so much for joining us here today, Betsy.
Thank you.
And our next guest is Dr. Melinda Connor. She is a professor, and there are a lot of alphabets behind your name here, sweetie. Melinda Connor, DD, PhD, AMP, FAM, EHP-C, Director of Research at Acupuncture University in Hilo, Hawaii, USA. Dr. Melinda Connor holds degrees from Harvard University, Wellesley College, University of San Francisco, American Military University, California Coast University, and University of Arizona, and was a National Institutes of Health T32 postdoctoral fellow at the University of Arizona in the program in integrative medicine. Dr. Connor is the current Director of Research at Acupuncture University and the Chair Emerita for the BOD for the National Alliance of Energy Practitioners. She is a fellow for the American Alternative Medicine Association and the Royal Society of Medicine in the UK, the founder of Earth Songs Holistic Consulting, the Resonance Modulation Training Program, and has written 10 books. So both of these ladies have extensive information and experience, and we feel absolutely delighted to have them on today. My hope is that we can get the information shared here out far and wide. So I'm very excited about that. Thank you again, both of you, for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and put the link up across the screen right now for the NCCOEP and have Dr. Melinda share briefly what that is before we jump into the questions today.
It's the National Certification Center of Energy Practitioners. And one of the critical issues in this country is both protecting consumers, which is extraordinarily important, and protecting practitioners. And in most states in this country, we don't have protection for energy practitioners. They're kind of in this gray no man's land, you know? And being able to practice in integrity, being able to practice knowing that you're doing it appropriately, knowing that the legal protections are there, knowing that you can serve your community in a way that you feel competent and you're respected as a professional. Those are really, really important issues. So the Certification Center has actually developed national level certification for 11 different divisions within the energy healing community. So we have a division for shaman, and we have a division for medical intuition, clinical intuition, a Qigong division, and the Tai Chi division. We have a cognitive somatic energy practices division, which for those of you that are in the psychological community is the energy psychology work, but defined specifically for the lay practitioner. So they're not practicing clinical psychology, they're doing things that are within the lay scope of practice. Laying on of hands healing, spiritual healing, Reiki, radiesthesia, dowsing, and full spectrum healing. So we have a range of different areas where you can join the community, where you can become nationally certified. And these are real programs. That it includes an ethics test. It includes a standard of practice tests. You agree to abide by, appropriate regulations, ethically and standard of practice wise. There are individual requirements in each division. Most ask you to get liability insurance. Be sure that you have a business license, a health and safety inspection, and a fire inspection, so that the environment that you're working in is appropriate to meet clients and take care of clients. And a lot of people in the energy healing community didn't realize that you needed a fire inspection, didn't realize that you needed to get a business license. So we're trying to get that information out to people and make sure that they are appropriately prepared to present themselves as a professional and in a professional manner.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay, the first question that we're going to go to is for Betsy. Betsy's off camera today, and we're totally just grateful that she's showing up in this way for us. But this is a question that we're going to go ahead and have for Betsy to start us off with. The question is, what are the laws around making claims, cures, diagnosing, prescribing, and just anything else that you'd like to add? Can you go ahead and start with this question?
Well, this is managed by the states. There's no federal regulation of healing practices, or hardly any professional practices. So it all depends on what the state law says, whether you're legal or not. There's two kinds of legal. One is, could you be subject to criminal penalties? And the other is, could you be subject to action by your licensing board against your license if you are a licensed health practitioner? The first one, it has to do with the practice of medicine. Basically, every state makes it illegal, that is to say, a crime, to practice medicine without a license. And most states define medicine as anything and everything you could possibly imagine one person doing for another person. So the first rule is, if you are not a licensed medical physician, you don't want to say or do any of the things that can get you in that kind of trouble. However, even licensed medical professionals, physicians, can be found as operating outside their scope of practice. And that would be in the area of licensure. So doctors are licensed, physical therapists are licensed, massage therapists are licensed, everybody, not everybody, obviously, but many practices are licensed. And each state defines the scope of practice of that license. And I understand a number of states now are moving towards saying that doctors who used to be able to do everything and anything they wanted to do, if they include massage in their practice, must have a massage license. Now, there's a rationale for that in terms of consumer protection. On the other hand, it also is a way of cutting out other people who do massage and may be licensed to do massage. When the doctors begin to move into that area. So really there's no one answer for legal. The basic answer is don't do or say anything that is going to be construed in your state as the practice of medicine. And then if you have a license in another profession, do check and see what's within the scope of your license.
Okay, that sounds really good. So basically what someone would do is they would look up the licensure for their specific state where they live, right?
Yes. Now, some states have these safe harbor freedom to practice laws. There are 11 states that have what are called health freedom laws. Mm-hmm. And they make specific exceptions for things that you can do that don't require a license, as long as you follow the rules they set out, which are mostly about disclosure of what your training and competency is. And those do vary quite a bit.
Okay. All right. Well, that takes us to our next question, which is, what's the best way to know the legal requirements, just state by state, as it pertains to energy healing?
So let me take that one for a minute. We have some of that information posted on the Certification Center website. Some of that information is posted on websites by various energy healing training programs, particularly the larger ones. But some of that, you actually have to go to the individual state, hire an attorney, and have them do a review for you, because the states have interesting issues, even with the health freedom states. For example, I live in Arizona, mm-hmm. which is one of those states which has health freedom parameters. But there are some caveats in that health freedom parameter. For example, if you are a pastor, you're allowed to do laying on of hands. But the $25 ordinations that you get often over the internet are not what they're talking about. If you go deeper into the regulations, you find that they want a recognized religion being practiced by a pastor that's appropriately certified for that religion and offering regular services. So buying a $25 ordination from a non-recognized church and thinking that you're now legally protected going out and doing energy work would not be appropriate. That's not providing you the legal protection that you think.
And I have heard of that happening. So that's probably why you brought it up as well. And just to be clear, the reason why we're doing this today is because we really love people, and we want to make sure both the consumer and the practitioners are aware and educated and informed, right, about what they can do and what is legally even acceptable. And it's for everybody's protection. You know what I mean? Like, it's just really smart. I honestly was like, people just need to keep the bureaucratic stuff out of it. I had that opinion until I went to a reflexology place, actually in Arizona, and it was not what I thought it was. My grandma used to do reflexology for me when I was a little girl. That was not it. And I don't want to say I was traumatized, but I don't want that to happen to anyone ever. You know what I mean? So I think that there's a place, for, yes, this is important, you guys.
There is a place. One of the interesting things that's happened in the last 5 years is now in 24 states, there is requirements for anybody who's practicing energy healing to also be a massage therapist.
Yeah.
You have to go out and get an additional $7,000 to $12,000 worth of training. 500 to 600 hours is the average. Some states actually are asking for a full 1,000 hours now. And that additional training can be very, very valuable. It's certainly valuable in consumer interactions and protecting consumers. But there are other options. And to have that as the only option in a state becomes very interesting. And let's digress a second and go back to what Betsy was speaking about, because it's relevant to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a requirement for a particular form of energy practice, say Reiki, to be conducted by a massage therapist, a licensed massage therapy practitioner, if you have someone who is a physical therapist, who is a licensed physical therapist, and they are not a massage therapist, a nurse, and they are not a massage therapist, they can no longer practice the energy work in integrity unless it's in that scope of practice that Betsy mentioned a few minutes ago. And one of the things we'd really like to make people who are licensed aware of is that in many states, their scope of practice doesn't cover the energy work. And they think because, again, they're licensed, that they're protected, and they may not be.
You mean in regards to the license to touch?
Yes. They may have a license to touch, but if it's not within their scope of practice to do the energy work, then they can't do the energy work. They can do what's explicitly stated in their scope of practice.
That makes sense, actually. But yeah, that's really good information to know. So thank you so much for answering those questions about where to find the state information. But even what we have on the website for the NCCOEP, it is not like it's changing all the time, right? So don't rely that upon that for all of the information.
Actually, February 28th was the latest change, and that happened in Ohio. So it's an ongoing process. States are changing the information with every session. We have bills waiting in 7 different states that may adopt the massage therapy credential issue. We have a dozen states that are looking at possible health freedom protections. Mm-hmm. So it can be a very complex situation. One of the things I'd like to mention while we have a moment is that all health freedom acts are not created equally. Mm-hmm. There are differences in every state. Mm-hmm. And the individual practitioner really needs to go out and review their Health Freedom Act, because some of them give the consumer permission to pick and choose their practitioner, but they don't protect the consumer past that, and they don't protect the practitioner past that. And that's the vast majority of the ones that are currently being submitted to legislatures right now.
Where would somebody find that? Oh,
say again?
Where would somebody find out about that information?
You go to the state legislature, and they will have a listing of all of the bills that are in front of the legislature at that time. And if you put in energy healing, energy modality, energy practices, put in Reiki, healing touch, polarity therapy, things like that, you can do a search on the various state websites, and bills that have that language in them will come up. And then you can go ahead and look and review those bills and see where they are in the process. Are they in committee? Are they actually being voted on? Are they asking for people to give input and information, which can be very valuable? The community needs to have a voice in this process. So yes, please go out, look at your state information, and take a good look at it. Read it carefully.
Yeah, thank you so much for that suggestion. I really appreciate that. Lots of times we just get focused in our life or whatever, and we don't recognize, yeah, you got to stay awake, with this kind of stuff. Thank you so much for what you've already shared. Okay, Betsy, I know you are on a time frame, so we're going to go ahead and ask you the next question here. It says, if no accredited training has been done, are people still able to legally operate as a business and still offer energy healing?
Well, that's another one of these state by state issues. Really depends on the language of the legislation. There's where there isn't any inclusion of an energy medicine practice in any scope of licensure, and there's no health freedom law, then I think it's very dangerous to try to set up a professional practice. What do you think, Melinda?
I would have to agree with that. In a number of states, you can do an ordination and it is accepted. But there are also now 37 states out of our 50 states in the US which do not allow a religious exemption for a practitioner unless they are, again, ordained in a traditional and recognized church, certified by that church, practicing in a congregational setting, whatever that particular thing is. And that makes a significant difference because the energy practitioner working out of their home, occasionally doing a Reiki session, does not meet that criterion because they're not offering regular religious services. They're not in a place of worship necessarily unless they've defined a place, for example, in their house or their business for that services. So it's very, very important to go out and check. Really, really important.
And go through the actual words in the state laws for your state. And if you don't know, then you can hire an attorney and then they can help you make sure that you're all set. So
I can tell you that Betsy is very wise at these things.
Thank you so much for being here and for helping people. So a lot of times what happens is people will go and they'll receive their Reiki attunement, but they don't have a massage therapy license. But then they are offering Reiki services for people, but they don't have the pastoral thing in place, right? That you were just barely referring to. And so even though they start up their own business license and stuff, they really need to look at what their state requirements are, if that's even permissible.
Exactly. So 37 states, you're not protected with a religious credential. 24 states, if you're a Reiki practitioner, you best have a massage therapy credential because there are states that are actually prosecuting individuals now. For example, Florida is very, very strict. If you are offering energy services, you must have a massage therapy license. So those kinds of things get to be very, very important when you've had 2 or 3 weekends of training. You may have had them in a different state where the rules are different in that state. People are making assumptions that they can go out and start their business and they're all excited. And actually, no, it's not that simple. I wish it was.
Well, you have to look at it also from the point of view of the regulators and the licensing boards, and the state legislators. They get concerned because they know people are claiming to do things and doing things and our consumers protected. And they have to look around and find a box they can put it in that has some kind of self-regulating. I mean, the boards are sort of the licensing boards are kind of quasi-government entities. They are actually private, but they have a quasi-government function that they're assigned by law. And so they want to find some place where there's a board and there are some standards and you have to take exams and you can be penalized, you can lose your license, you have to register, you have to meet certain standards. So they look around and what do they find? They find massage or they find physical therapy, but it's because the energy medicine practice community hasn't gotten fully organized on a national basis yet, and certification is sort of step one for that. Our firm was very involved in the development of acupuncture. We got acupuncture needles approved by FDA as class 2 medical devices when used by a licensed or certified acupuncturist.
Yeah.
And from certification came licensure. But certification provided some national standards, and then the states began to feel more comfortable accepting certified practitioners or establishing licensing provisions of their own, sometimes as a part of the chiropractic board or part of the medical board.
Mm-hmm.
So that gradually that's how acupuncture made its way into the mainstream.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with Effie Kahn where she was telling me that she was actually arrested. This was, I think it was in the 60s.
Effie Chow, yeah.
Yeah, and yes, that's correct. I'm sorry, I said her name. And when she told me that, I was like, wait, what? Because I didn't even know that that was a thing. But of course, if they were illegal, then they were seized at the ports.
Well, they embargoed the needles at the border because, of course, they were all coming from China and Japan and Korea, and it was just it was a mess. But gradually, by bootstrapping, establishing standards, establishing certification board that followed conventional standards for setting standards.
Yeah.
And then it became more acceptable, even though on a personal level, many legislators, state and federal, know about energy healing, use energy healing. There's somebody in the family that uses energy healing, but breaking through from what those people know as individuals into a policy discussion is very hard. There's a culture, a legislative culture that says if you sound too far out, you won't get any co-sponsors.
Yeah. Yep.
So one of the things energy practitioners can do across the country to support the community as a whole is to become nationally certified. Now, this is in addition to the certificate that you get from the training program. We also have a natural health practitioner pathway for people who have a spontaneous opening and haven't had any kind of formal training. Mm-hmm. So there are lots of different ways to get from point A to point B. And the practitioner community themselves have set these standards. So they're not being sent by people who don't know anything about energy healing. The full spectrum standards were set by a group of actually almost 100 full spectrum practitioners participated in the process. The same thing with the Qigong standards, the same thing with the Reiki standards. We had meetings. I think the group that took the longest to organize the standards was the cognitive somatic energy practices, and they met for almost 18 months to develop their standards. So these are the community establishing what's appropriate and proper for us to practice in integrity, and that's extremely important.
I agree. And that's why I decided to join when you invited me to join the board, because that's really important to me, to protect really the ability and the freedom to be able to even do energy healing. And I also really love educating people about the legitimacy of it, but I don't want people to be taking advantage of people. And this is a way to be able to actually make sure that there's not a bunch of charlatans coming in and just taking advantage of people,
We actually have empirical testing for a number of the divisions, which are hard science tests. We use things like triaxial extra low frequency magnetic field meters, or RF frequency counters. We look at pH and whether or not a practitioner can change pH on demand. All sorts of interesting things. So we have a number of very clean, very accurate mechanical measures now that can appropriately test, or at least start the process of testing energy practitioners.
Yeah, I love that, because it's that quantifiable, like you can measure it and you know that it's working. It's not just somebody saying, I feel it. There's a difference. And I can feel it too, but I want to like be able to see it. That's why I like things like the biofield viewer and the other instruments that you bring at our conferences to show people that you can measure the voltage coming off the hands. This is a science. And we're here because we want to be able to protect that ability as well. It is about protecting that and the practitioners and the consumers. So thank you guys both for being here. I just appreciate it so much. I have a couple more questions and then we'll go ahead and kind of finish it up. So Betsy, what forms of legal protection do you recommend for professional practitioners?
Have a lawyer. Have a lawyer in your state who you have established a relationship with before you have a problem. Because that's really, really important. First of all, they can just help guide you, probably pretty inexpensively. Even if it's new to them, they can look and see what your guardrails are in your state for what it is that you want to do. And they can give you general business advice as well, which may be helpful for people setting up practices. Yeah. And the second thing I think is really to pursue certification, because as Melinda said, certification helps the whole community. It establishes legitimacy and it establishes visibility. And it's where you start organizing for a health specialty, because you want to have, in the end, you want to have consumers protected by people who understand what the appropriate standards are for the particular type of practice involved. You don't want people who are not, who have no real comprehension. And that's the place we need to get to.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. I also saw this other link on the NCCOEP's website, and it says state support of energy practitioners. That's got some great information there, comprehensive information that will help support you. So if you're watching this right now, I would recommend that you check that link out, and you can also, get involved that way as well. I appreciate that. Yes, it just went ahead and shared there as well. Somebody's asking me for that. There you go. Okay, try that one. See if that will work for you. Okay, let's see here. The next questions that we have, what does it mean to have a license to touch, and what does that cover? We did kind of go through that specifically a little bit, but do you have anything else to add to that one?
Yes, actually. I want to clarify something, because there is kind of a challenge within our community where we like to share that we've worked on headaches, or we've worked on depression, or we've worked on cancer, or we've worked on a broken leg, or, we go into surgery with people. It is not appropriate for us to make a claim that we can heal cancer, for example, in 6 weeks.
Well, that seems so obvious to me, but I guess not.
It's not appropriate. First off, cancer is a medical diagnosis, and unless you're a physician doing energy healing, or a family nurse practitioner who's appropriately licensed to make a diagnosis like that, nope, you can't say that. It's a diagnosis, and it's a medical diagnosis. The other thing is, nowadays, the Federal Communications Commission is looking at websites of energy practitioners.
Federal Trade Commission, excuse me. You mean Federal Trade Commission, Melinda?
Sorry, Federal Trade Commission. I keep swapping them. Betsy keeps me honest, you see.
Awesome. I love that.
And what they do is they look at these claims and they go out to someone and say, all right, you're a wellness practitioner, and yes, in this state you're appropriately credentialed, but you're making a claim. Can you back it up with research? So they're now asking for you to be able to give a set of scientific studies that demonstrate your claim. So if you're saying that you can heal cancer, you better have been the healer in a research study, in 4 or 5 different research studies showing that yes, in fact, you can produce those results in a scientific setting. So it's very, very important how you present yourself, and that the information that you give to people is accurate and not too expansive, even though there can be longing to share that capacity with people.
Yeah, I think that's really important too. I've had to help people adjust their bios and take some things out and just let them know, yeah, you can't do that. We're not going to do that on my website. We're not going to be involved in that kind of thing. So, and I wanted to go ahead and kind of finish up with a little bit more on what you said with even the term depression, because it is a mental health diagnosis. So this other question over here that says, what is important for people to understand around the term mental health? Like, you can't call yourself a mental health anything really, right? Mental health.
Not unless you're licensed as a mental health practitioner within your state. Now, there are different levels of licensing. You can be doing group work in a facility where you're appropriately credentialed. You can be a family therapist. You can be a social worker. You can be a clinical psychologist, a neuropsychologist, people like that. But they're appropriately trained and credentialed in that area. If you are a lay practitioner and you have not had that training, you may not make mental health claims in any state, not in any state.
Yeah.
And you can't call it wellness. So you can't say, I'm a wellness practitioner and I work with depression. Big buzzer.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
So you can't say depression, anxiety would be another one.
Yep.
Could you say like feelings of sadness? Could
you can say, I support relaxation effects.
Okay. So like, help us out with some of the terminology that is legal.
Again, it depends state by state.
Yeah.
There are things called reserve words, and certain states reserve words specifically. But if it's a diagnosis, you can't say it. Not if you're a wellness practitioner.
Okay. What if somebody is like, they have the right licensure for that state, they have the business license, the liability insurance, they have all of that stuff in place, they still can't use it, right? Because they don't have the mental health.
If they're appropriately licensed. So for example, I'm actually trained as both a clinical psychologist and a neuropsychologist, but I'm not licensed in this state. I was a licensed student in the state of California where I did my training, but I'm not licensed in the state of Arizona. I operate under my pastoral credential in this state. It's inappropriate for me, if I'm not licensed, to say that I can heal depression. All right, that would be languaging that's not appropriate for me to say. What I can say is that I've had clinical training and I bring that level of understanding, but that I do not practice psychology. I will be happy to refer you to a practicing psychologist if that's the support you need. The energy work is different. We're doing different work.
Yeah, it is. Well, this is what I've been trying to help people. I'm like, I need to get Melinda on record so I can just refer people to this video, because me saying it isn't good enough, I guess, for some people.
When people have deep longing, anyone saying it isn't enough. They're going to operate from their longing. But remember, if you're operating from your longing, there's a balance in consequences. There's cause that you have made and an effect that's going to show up. So it's not so fun to make your bed and lie in it when the lying in the bed is going to be uncomfortable. do keep that in mind.
Yeah. And it's not a matter of just they're going to tell you that you can't do it. Like, what are some of the consequences people could face if they're breaking these laws?
Betsy, that's a better one for you to answer than for me. If somebody is making diagnostic claims on their website and they're an unlicensed practitioner, what would be the consequences?
Well, the worst is the conviction of a felony with a year or more in prison for the unlicensed practice of medicine.
That is a big deal.
That's a big deal. They can also face lawsuits from unhappy clients for misrepresentation and fraud. And of course, any of that is going to be bad for the community as a whole.
Yeah. And again, you guys that are watching this right now, the reason why we're bringing this information to you is so that you have awareness around it. I have heard stories about people. One lady, she said that she was the energy practitioner muscle tested and told her that her husband of 35 years was cheating on her. And she found out by muscle testing that woman moved out of her home and separated from her husband. And that's like, what? Oh, go ahead.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I mean, that's why appropriate certification and licensure includes ethical training.
Yes.
That's very, very important, that there's a standard of ethics and people understand it and they're trained in how to approach practice ethically.
Yes, I think that it's important. It's for the practitioners and the consumers. So let's talk about that really quick. If you are somebody who you deeply love energy healing, like I do, what are some tips that you guys might have to find out if somebody is legitimate and, that it's okay to go to them?
Well, one of the first things is see, are they nationally certified? Because if they're nationally certified, they've gone through an actual review process. They've had to meet national standards, pass ethics exams, pass standards of practice exams. They've had to meet the standards that their community defines as being a good quality practitioner. And we actually have some flexibility in there. For example, in Qigong, there are those that are very traditionally trained. There are those that are ordained Taoist priests, and there are those that are trained through certificate training programs. There's a wonderful College of Medical Qigong, for example, in this country. And so there are a number of different pathways in Qigong. We've taken a look at that, and actually there are pathways on the website depending on your training and requirements that are specific to those types of training. So we've tried to do a very comprehensive job. The next thing you do is, as Betsy mentioned, you talk to an attorney. That's appropriate step. It's a good common sense step. It's a good business step. Having an attorney available for your business is appropriate, and surprisingly, you can get affordable consults with attorneys. So, and I found personally that spending the money has always paid off every single time.
In advance. It's a good investment. And you can write it off probably, right? But I'm not a tax
expense.
Yeah. I'm not a tax lawyer, so I'm not going to say that. I'm just knowing for myself. Okay, Betsy, we know that your time is limited. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we let you go?
Well, I'd just also like to add, from a consumer point of view, if you go to a practitioner, you go, start up with someone new because you're looking for this as a consumer, and that person tells you, and you ask them, like, are you certified? What are your qualifications? You licensed in something. It's not a bad thing, and practitioners should all welcome that. And they tell you, no, they don't have anything because they are part because you will be joining a membership organization, and that practitioners who are practicing just with members of a membership organization are somehow exempted from these other regulations and laws we've been discussing. And that's really not the case. So I would be very cautious if you're asked to become a member of some group, because somehow this will protect your practitioner.
I've heard of that a lot, actually.
Yes, and it's pretty widespread. But as far as I've ever been able to tell, there is no exemption like that. If you join a religious group or a membership association that argues that gives gives the practitioners constitutional protection, there really is no legal basis for that claim. And I'd be very cautious about getting involved in anything like that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. There's 2 questions that came up. Do you have time for those real quick?
Sure, absolutely.
So this one says, I had a violation warning with my old company name. Focus on what you can say. The guy that called me said you can say emotions, but not even trauma. Emotional wellness could be okay, at least here. Are you guys aware of that type of verbiage?
It's specific to the state.
Mm-hmm.
So I would caution always the use of trauma, because trauma is actually, again, a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
It's both a psychological diagnosis and a medical diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And it can also be, for example, muscle trauma or muscle injury from a traumatic accident is something that a massage therapist or a physical therapist might use and is appropriate in their scope of practice, when they're treating. But for a wellness practitioner, trauma is not an appropriate claim. So that would be because it is a diagnostic term. Emotional health or emotional support, I think that's very dependent on the state. Betsy, do you have a moment to weigh in on that?
You just have to be very careful about claims, because there is the state, there's the FTC, and the FTC does have, sort of a task force on this, looking at complementary alternative medicine generally.
Yeah.
We live in a culture that's highly medicalized in terms of conventional medicine, and there are political and economic forces that are headwinds, and it's important for us to make as much progress as we can, as quickly as we can, to get established, because it's the institutions are, most of the institutions of our whole society have bought into this medical monopoly on health, and most of the individuals in our society have bought out of it, and that gulf has just got to be crossed, because people are less and less willing to accept that only conventional standardized medicine can be used for their health.
Mm-hmm.
And those people, and they will, they will come to our side once the issue is joined.
Yeah, and I'm trying to do my part to help educate both sides so that we can be aware. If we don't know, then we don't know. But like, when you know better, you do better. That's my favorite saying by Maya Angelou. I love it. If a lay person begins a certification program, this is the question here. How would this person saying, how would we ensure any certification is legally insured as licensed? a layperson's program doesn't ensure a license, correct?
Not ever.
Yeah.
Not ever. So if you're, for example, if you're doing Reiki,
Mm-hmm.
there is a Reiki division,
Mm-hmm.
and there are training requirements. There's curriculum. Actually, we've published peer-reviewed journal articles on appropriate curriculum for Reiki practitioners. And there is actual, the documents, the PDFs that you have to fill out for the training to become nationally certified. So there are listings of information, and you certainly could check that against your training. However, at this time, unless you are licensed in an existing healthcare field, there is no direct licensure for energy practitioners anywhere in the country at this time. Okay? So while I really want to see that happen, we have made some lovely progress. For example, this past summer, the organizations became signers in the Traditional Integrative and Complementary Medicine Declaration, which was presented to the World Health Organization.
Mm-hmm.
And being allowed to be signers means that we are part of evidence-based traditional medicine. So if you go out to the NAOEP.org website and go halfway down the homepage, there's a thing that says bibliographies. And we have links to 15,000
Mm-hmm.
peer-reviewed journal articles that are available to the public. Some of them, if you want the actual article, you download it, you do have to pay $35 for. But a number of them, we have direct links, they're open access, or the journal has moved them to the point that they're available to the public. So that becomes a very important piece of the process. But as of this minute, there is no licensure, direct licensure for energy practitioners in any state in the US.
Yeah. So basically, if anyone's telling you that, at least up till this date, today's April 28th, 2023, when you're watching this video right now, it is not, that's not accurate.
Not true. And only states can license. We have a number of organizations around the country claiming that they can license you. They cannot. Only states in the US can do a licensure.
Yeah, that's really good to know. People have asked me, I teach an energy healing for beginners course, and people have asked me, does this give me a certification? Absolutely not. It is not certifying you to do anything. It's just teaching the information and where do you find the data, you know, and then learning some basics. That's all it is. I make sure people know that. No, it is not a certification. It is not a license. So thank you guys so much for being here. I want to go ahead and let Betsy go since she's got a time crunch there. Thank you so much for joining us today, Betsy. We really appreciate you. Betsy Lehrfeld, thank you.
It's been a pleasure, Tammy. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Well, we know that she's got to go, but I've got to ask you maybe one or two more questions, Melinda. Are you okay with that?
That's fine.
I really appreciate you. You have given me some beautiful, beautiful skills in helping people to understand a lot about energy healing. I'd love to just hear a little bit more about where your passion comes from for this. And then I'd like to share some of the ethics education that you also have been empowering people with as well.
Oh my. Well, I started learning the energy work at the age of 4 in my grandmother's rose garden. And my grandmother's family line came out of Europe, out of the great houses in Europe where the women kept the still rooms. And so at 4 and 5 and 6 and 10, I was going out in the field with my grandmother and learning how to assess plants to make tinctures and how to make salves for the horses and things like that,
Mhm.
which was very common in those days. I'm an old person. And the joy was being able to learn the process and do the process, and Monty was very strict, and she had a good friend teacher who also worked with me, and I got drilled in all sorts of things, all sorts of different ways. And then at home, my father was a psychologist and my mother was a psychiatrist. So mother was at BU Med and dad was at Harvard Med for many years, and so we had lots of medical stuff going on at home as well.
It's awesome. I love hearing that, because I think that when people hear the don't do this or don't do that, they might have a tendency to dismiss, like, oh, she just doesn't understand. But in reality, you've been part of this world, energy healing and energy psychology and the like, for many, many years. And you want to help support the entire industry, really, in a way that protects both the practitioner and
the client.
exactly. And I want to make sure people really, truly understand that. And I appreciate all that you've been able to accomplish. I mean, really, I think it's quite difficult even for me to be able to grasp how much you've really supported all of us. So thank you.
My pleasure. We do lots and lots of research. So let me share with the community. If you have a research study on energy healing you really want to do, we would love to talk with you. www.earthsongs.com. Give me a call. My cell phone number is on there. Contact Tammy. She knows how to get a hold of me.
Yep,
and I'm happy to talk with you about research. We've done a number of fun studies developing practitioners and developing national certification, empirical testing. We have done lots of work on different kinds of practitioner skills. We've got a wonderful study going on right now on distance attunements by Reiki practitioners. We're actually looking at EEGs to see whether or not brain waves match or change or how they change, that kind of thing. We're about to start a study with another laboratory looking at supervision. So your training as a practitioner, can a more senior practitioner do long distance review of the energy healing practice that you're doing? One of the studies that I was fortunate to do when I was at University of Arizona was with, for example, the Reconnection organization. We went on site and we tested over 100 reconnection healers over the course of a couple of days, and we looked at whether or not they could oscillate triaxial meters and whether or not they could create physiological shifts on people, and we could measure it appropriately, whether we could see there would be microcapillary dilations. Dr. Ann Baldwin and Dr. Gary Schwartz, Dr. Iris Bell have all done some very profound work. And I did a study with Dr. Alan Hamilton at the University of Arizona. And at the time, he was the director of neurosurgery, where I worked to repair a spinal cord injury from 1,800 miles away. And we were able to make some good progress with that. So there's lots of research going on. Do not despair. Don't feel defeated or fearful going into this process. What you do is you properly prepare, you act with integrity, you show your willingness to behave in a professional manner, so that even if the licensure isn't there, you've done all of the things that's appropriate within the context of your state to meet the requirements. And then we go on from there and we build professional standards and a professional community.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. And you're going to be at the summer conference in Ogden, Utah, June 9th and 10th. And I'm so excited to have you come, because really you're all about empowering people and helping them, and when they understand that, and and also like the ethical, why the reasons for the ethical, education and information and those kind of qualifications. Like, why is that important? I've heard of some really interesting things, like people saying, someone close to you, someone near to in your life is going to die soon. I'm like, what? You know, like, you can't say stuff like that. That's not ethical. Some of this stuff just blows my mind. And then others, like, I feel like people are really supported and helped in many ways when people stay in their scope. And so their scope of practice, and they understand ethics, So can you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about perhaps some of the places that you'd recommend people go if they've never had any sort of ethics training at all?
Oh my, there are some wonderful books out on the internet. A former attorney, Midge Murphy, who was a risk management specialist and worked with energy practitioners for many years. She's now doing forest bathing, but she's written a beautiful book and has a beautiful training on her website. Dr. David Feinstein, who's part of the Eden Energy Medicine community, he's Donna Eden's husband, has written a wonderful energy practitioner ethics book. There's an ethics section in my professional practice book. There's a number of lovely books that are out on the internet. Amazon has them, Barnes and Noble, Lulu, to name some of the publishers. Oh gosh. There are a number of groups, Healing Touch, for example, program, and Healing Beyond Borders, both teach ethics as part of their work. Depending on the Reiki community, they may teach an ethics section in their Reiki class. The Qigong community is very, very careful about teaching ethics as part of their work. And self-mastery, which is a piece of the ethics, which is extremely important. Having the ability to positively impact people means that if you are in a temper, you might potentially have the ability to negatively impact people. So self-management, appropriate self-management also is a part of the process. So there are lots of lovely options that are out there. And actually, we've talked to a number of training programs. There are actually over 600 members in the National Alliance of Energy Practitioners now. And a number of those are teaching ethics. So what you can do is, if you're looking at taking some training and doing some training, ask if they have an ethics module. Ask if you can read the book in advance that's associated with the module, or do they have special training materials? That's a very important piece of the process. If they don't have an ethics module, you might ask them why, and where they suggest you get appropriate ethics training.
That's really good. Yeah, because if you don't know, you don't know, that kind of thing. So I went ahead and I put some of these links in the comments for those of you who are watching live. It may not appear for those of you who are watching on the replay. So just as a courtesy, if you'd like to receive that document that's got all of these things that she's talking about specifically, I'll go ahead and I'll put it on my website along with this video, a copy of this video, so you can watch it at any time. I'm also going to go ahead and just give you my email as well. And then, Dr. Melinda, I have a question about, I want to actually do a study. I want to lead a study about a modality that I really love. It's called foot zoning.
Ah, yes.
And I want to kind of help empower the schools that I do know of that I believe are, really ethical, valid. Like, their training is substantial. They're really training people. It's not a weekend thing. It's like months long practice, hands-on. Like, it's, they're filling out papers. They understand the anatomy and the physiology. Like, there's a lot more to it. It's not just this weekend thing where they learn to rub feet. It's different. It's more than that. And people are, from my perspective, getting some really good, response from it. but there's been no studies on it that I'm
Let's do it. That sounds like fun.
Yes.
I actually got training in several different kinds of reflexology. I did massage therapy training amidst all of my other training because I wanted to know and understand. And so I'm trained in reflexology as well, not as extensively as the foot zone folks are, but I've had foot zone experiences and they're bliss filled. You know, they're just glorious. So absolutely, let's go ahead and do some research and get some good quality hard science behind it.
Yeah.
See what we're able to do for people.
Yeah, I'm really like, so what's the first step if somebody did want to do that? Just reach out to you and then you can kind of help them step by step what to do. Okay.
Yeah, in general, you want to have a budget of $10,000 or more. That's kind of the starting place because you have to do, for any kind of study, you have to do a thing called a human studies ethics review. And depending on where you do that, it can run upwards of $5,000 just for the human studies ethics review.
Okay.
The design of the study is a piece that has to be done, recruiting practitioners and having them appropriately qualified. Getting permission from a local healthcare site, for example, or a building, getting permission from the insurance company, recruiting clients that are willing to be part of the study and, you know, receive these blissful sessions.
I'm sure
Yeah, exactly. And the standard, industry standard is a double-blind placebo controlled. So some people would be able to get actual reflexology sessions and some would not. So there are a lot of different steps and moving parts to it. But in general, you know, if you contact us, if we're not available to your local estate, it may be too far for us to get to do a study. I can put you in touch with researchers in that state who can help you. But generally, the starting place is a budget of about $10,000, and it goes up from there depending on the size of the study and the complexity of the study.
Okay, well, I think that would be absolutely marvelous. And I mean, if we have to drive down to, you know, Arizona, then so be it. Or fly.
You can come visit.
Actually, this winter's really kind of kicked my butt. So, okay. So to finish off, do you have anything else that you'd like to add as in regards to ethics and standards, and of course the certification that is on the NCCOEP? Like, I'd just like to hear your final thoughts today.
There is one more thing. A lot of very capable practitioners get beautiful flashes of insight on techniques that will help lots and lots of people. The challenge is, without research, you cannot make claims. And you cannot go out and make a diagnostic claim. One of the questions I get on a pretty regular basis is, I've developed PQR technique and it works really well on depression, and I want to be able to say that on my website, and you can't.
Yeah.
Not unless you're a licensed therapist, not unless you're a licensed physician. And then you still have to go out and have the scientific research backing it up. So I would caution people to be careful and gentle in their claims so that they act with wisdom, and that over time, you know, it's not insurmountable. Doing a research study is not insurmountable. It just takes a little time and a little cash, and you can save up for it for a year or two, you know, or 3, you know, whatever it takes. And then you do a research study that's appropriate for the concept that you want to look at. And that way, when you start to move forward and you want to make a claim, you're doing it in integrity.
Yeah, and that's really important. The other thing that I just kind of want to kind of add to with that is that integrity piece. because, you know, if we're people who believe in energy healing and that's really important to us and we're doing it because we love people and we want to help people, then that integrity piece really does come into play, and it is a big part. And when you have seen people, you know, be prevented from helping people in the way that they want to, you know, you see how important this is, not just as the practitioner, but, you know, other people who really want that extra help, who are looking for that extra support. Anyway, I love educating people and also educating myself about it as well. There were some things that you were, and Betsy discussed at the beginning of today that I was not aware of. My grandma was a nurse for 40 years, for example, and she loved to rub people's feet. She went and learned reflexology, but yeah, she wouldn't have been able to do reflexology for people and charge them for reflexology sessions. She never did that, but like, just as an example, you know.
The American Holistic Nursing Association has put information on their website for nurses on whether or not it's in your scope of practice.
Mhm.
If it's not in your scope of practice in your state, get a hold of us. We'll help you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and put your website up one more time as well, earthsongs.com. So if you just joined us late and you want to be able to get a hold of Dr. Melinda Connor, this is her information. I also included your bio and Betsy's bio in the caption of this video as well. Does anybody have any other questions before we jump off? Here's a couple of resources that would be fantastic for you to check out. The NAOEP. Do you want to talk about what that is briefly? I don't think we discussed.
National Alliance of Energy Practitioners. It is free for any energy healing training program in the U.S. to join. And we have a curriculum review process, which you can choose to participate in. If you do, your students can get a 20% discount on national certification. So it's very simple, very straightforward, and we invite you to do it. The curriculum review doesn't cost you anything, doesn't cost you anything to join the Alliance. Become a member, help us make energy healing a solid profession in this country.
Yes, that's valuable. And this is the place where they would go to learn more about the NCCOEP. And do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about that?
And this is the place you go to get nationally certified. We have listings for all of the divisions. We have the division requirements, and you can get nationally certified in more than one division. It's one price tag. So, you know, prepare your paperwork for each division that you're applying for. We've had a number of people, for example, who did Reiki and a spiritual division, or did full spectrum work, or did both Tai Chi and Qigong. Mm-hmm. You know, Tai Chi is really a subsection of Qigong. Mm-hmm. We're holding it separately because many people in this country have been trained separately. But mm-hmm. in fact, Tai Chi is a spin-off of Qigong. Mm-hmm. So those kinds of things are there. They are available. We're delighted to have you involved, and we're delighted to support you. The licensing bill, if you would like to develop a committee for your state, we have a copy of a licensing bill that has been vetted by a number of attorneys. So it is ready to go to be handed to state legislature and be formatted and submitted. We've done the work for you.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So yeah, if you are not sure what is included with what you have, I honestly think that getting an attorney and having them look through your stuff would probably be the best bet, not just going for it, because as was mentioned here, doing the things and then just hoping that you don't get in trouble. There's a whole task force on the FTC, right? Is that the right one?
Yes, the FTC. It's the one I keep messing up.
No, you're right. I just couldn't remember. I'm like, what? But
Yeah, exactly.
a lot of these books that were mentioned as well, there's like 4 or 5 books that were mentioned for ethics. Why not get them all? Why not have them and go through them and then take the ethics exam right on the NCCOEP? Now, Melinda, are we going to have a team from the board coming out doing any sort of certifications this summer?
We can do testing
Mhm.
at the conference. Um, Tracy, who is the acting chair right now, Brian is on a leave of absence. So Dr. Tracy Lutz, who's an MD,
Mhm.
is the acting chair, and she's going to be coming out to the conference with me.
Cool.
I don't know who else from the boards will be, but we're delighted to have people come by the booth and see us and take
Yeah.
some of the tests and come and play and share. There was something else that I wanted to remind you of. And it's that people can call us, people can email us.
Mhm.
We will answer questions. We're happy to do that. We aren't a replacement for an attorney. You do need an attorney. But we are happy to answer questions. We'll point you in the right directions.
Yeah, it's quite valuable. I think I met you when you came to the conference. Let's see, this was when Donna Eden and David Feinstein came to our conference in Layton, Utah. This was in 2017. And you had these tests that out on your vendor space. We put them out there for you. And well, you put them out there. People were coming by and trying to do different things. And I will never forget the first one that I observed. This was from a 27-year-old young man, and he had long hair. And he said, my girlfriend brought me here. I don't even know what all of this is. And if I remember right, he really shifted the water.
He did.
It was remarkable. You
He
grabbed
did
me.
a beautiful job.
Did you see this?
We actually have a wonderful test where we put normalized water in a glass. And in fact, that article has just gone in to the European Society of Medicine for
Awesome.
review because we found some wonderful anomalies in what people do when they're changing the pH of water.
Oh,
And
wow.
we have people who do things that physics say can't happen.
Yeah.
Change the parts per million in water that you haven't touched, that's been sitting there for 10 minutes. And, we tested immediately before, we tested immediately after, and it's changed geometrically,
Wow.
from an 18 to a 230. So it's a geometric progression. It's a quantum result,
Yeah.
real time, from an energy practitioner that didn't even touch the jar. So we have all sorts of fun things for you to try. Come and play, come and see things, come and enjoy yourself.
That is awesome. Well, I am so excited. We'll see if we can get some stuff set up. If they are interested in doing the certification while you're already going to be in Utah, for the people who live local to Utah who are interested in getting that, how should they reach out to you? What would be your preference?
Well, they certainly can talk with us, and we can see what we can do to facilitate them getting squared away as quickly as possible. I don't know how many computers we're going to be able to bring on the airplane yet. And so how many people we can test concurrently is dependent on how much they let me schlep. The security people on airlines now, particularly here in Tucson, blessings on them. They are wonderful people. I come through there with, hundreds of thousands of dollars of research equipment on a regular basis, and they're so kind and so patient with me. They have to pull me aside, and scan everything for gunpowder and things like that.
Yeah.
And they put up with all of this equipment that I carry on, and a lot of it I actually have to have on the airplane in the cabin. I can't put it underneath. So it depends on how much room there is and things like that, how many folks we can test. But we'll do our best.
That is awesome. Well, I'm super excited. You guys make sure you reach out to Dr. Melinda on the NCCOEP. Many thanks to you and also to Betsy as well. I appreciate you so much. Really, thank you.
Our pleasure to be here today.
Okay, thank you so much again. We'll see you later. We'll see you in a couple months, like a month and a half.
Yes.
Sounds great. Bye-bye now.